Another one standing in the by-elections, Penny Hardman's with us for Peel and standing on the Lib Van ticket.
Yes.
So, and we do start with that. Your choices for doing that. I'm sure you get asked about it.
I do.
Why?
A number of reasons. One, we need a voice in Peel, and I think 3 MHKs representing the needs of Peel would be a good thing. 2, we have a party in power with the collective responsibility in Tynwald. The Chief Minister, he's not publicly elected. We have ministers who have to vote with the Chief Minister. So we already have a party in place. And 3, we're on a fiscal knife edge on the Isle of Man, and there's complicated legislation or legislative changes that need to be made. And I think that any MHK would feel quite overwhelmed with things going over their desk on a sort of regular basis, and that the support and research of a support team was a big factor for me in party politics.
And do you think that's the future of the Isle of Man, having more politics from parties than individuals?
The benefit of party politics, of course, is that the electorate votes someone in on their policies, and those policies remain for the term of that government. With independents, of course, in order to become a minister, they have to sometimes, well, quite often in fact, walk away from the policies that got them elected in the first place. So I do think it's the future.
Okay, well, you're signing up to the items, and we've got your sort of welcome letter here. So, I mean, overall, everything looks the same as everybody else's, except there are some local issues, and
there are
sewerage is the big one. It appears to be in Peel. Your stance?
It's been on the table a long time. In fact, I moved to Peel from Ballasalla when I was 11 years old, and we didn't have a beach in Ballasalla, and there was issues then about poo in the water, and I remember that moving to Peel and being quite horrified at a young age. Since then, my children have grown up, and we had a local business on the quayside, and that was quite disrupted by all the iris pipe work going in, and I thought, well, okay, this is a good thing. Children can play on the beach in safety. And actually, I'm going to be grandma in September, and that's how long it's been. And all that seems to have happened in the last 5 or 6 years is continued growth of the town, with no attempt to put a relevant infrastructure in place. And the sewerage has become a real public health emergency in my mind.
And what's the party's point on this? I mean, or your point? Well, what do you actually want to do to sort it out?
Well, we need to link to a main system.
Do you want to be iris plugged in, or your own local iris?
Well, local iris could work, but the option for a holding tank to sort of separate the waste is not a solution. That just takes the solids and puts the dirty water back into a bathing beach. Ideally, we should be part of iris, but I appreciate there's been issues with that contract, and the infrastructure for that isn't in place, but it needs to get fixed. And then there's an opportunity for government to update and make one piece of large infrastructure compliant with any sort of EU standards that they want to sort of get for sort of beach, blue flag beaches.
And you got the support of Kate Beecroft and co, have you, on this one?
I do.
To push hard as a party. Fine. The harbour you mentioned here. What's wrong with the harbour?
There's nothing wrong with the harbour.
Now it's being dredged, I meant.
The harbour is a wonderful plan, and it's brought a lot of people into the town. The issue with the harbour is, and it's another issue with government that's sort of moved away from its own people, is the recourse to consultants who don't always have a vested interest in what's going on the island. In the case of the harbour, there were experts who had a vested interest in the harbour retention scheme being a success. In Peel's case, they were fishermen and other users of the harbour, and actually they said exactly what was going to happen with the silting problem, but their concerns were ignored, or the advice was, well, we know how to deal with that, and what we've got now is the problem that our local experts identified.
But you're pro having the harbour as it is?
I am pro the harbour. I think it's a wonderful thing, but how to deal with what will be an ongoing sludge problem or silting problem does need to be addressed and decided upon. Now,
the population of Peel has been on the increase for some time, obviously, with all the borders going to be drawn shortly. But what's your views on this amount of people moving into the area?
Yeah, I think it's been the rapid pace of change in Peel. This has happened very, very quickly. I'm not sure whether the town has doubled or is a third bigger, but it's the fact that the infrastructure hasn't been improved. I think QE2 is 2,000 pupils now. When I started there in 1980, it was 400. I mean, I appreciate it wasn't a full school, but you know, it's a lot of kids. There's a lot of children at cloth workers. There's a big queues at the GPs. I mean, it's about 2 weeks now.
But it's bringing money into the town, isn't it? And rates are being paid. And
certainly talking around town is a feeling that nothing has happened for years. Rates have certainly gone up, but there doesn't look to be anything for that money.
So your ideas on what to do, what would you have in mind?
Well, we certainly need, and for me, we need to stop the building now, because we've got plenty. We did need housing in Peel. We've certainly got lots of housing in Peel, and we need to consolidate and make sure the infrastructure's in place.
But more facilities for these people.
More facilities, make sure. Well, for example, the regeneration scheme some years ago, when I was sitting on the commissioners, had a sort of a hub, taking the sort of the open spaces in Peel, Marketplace, for example, and starting with that and working down towards the quayside. And I think that would be a wonderful project to do in terms of leisure activities. You know, bringing people in to sort of, it's nice that they come down for an ice cream, but it'd be nice if there was more in the town to sort of sit out and, you know, enjoy leisure activities. You know, we have a railway line that's fabulous. Let's get it tidied up. Let's make the walks around Peel easier for everyone to get to, and you know, a bit cleaner and less muddy in some places.
Okay, let's look at the national issues. And I should ask you: do you see yourself as just doing things for Peel, or you know, backbench-wise, or do you see yourself being very much part of the government, or just purely following the Liv Van message, or would you like a position in government at some point?
Well, at the moment, for me, there are issues with the ministerial system in that, you know, at the point where you have power, you lose all power. So I do have a problem with the current system. But being certainly involved in government and having my voice heard in terms of national politics is very important. For me, it's about forming alliances, whether that's with other politicians or with the private sector, in order to get the right decisions made for the betterment of the island.
And I always have to ask this only because it's happened in the past. If you disagree with your party, what would you do?
Well, currently, you know, I stand behind Lib Van's policies, so I don't disagree with their policies, and I have freedom to vote for what I believe in terms of things that sit outside the policy. So I can't see that happening at the moment. I'm very happy with.
But the question is, what would you do if you did have a disagreement? Would you feel that you have to resign your position, or just resign from the party, or what? I mean, this has come up in the past. You understand why?
Of course it has come up in the past.
People ask this question, don't they?
And I suppose if you take a UK element and the party is pro-Europe or the opposite, then, you know, people have left parties. And I suppose if there was a fundamental disagreement, you would have to consider resigning from the party. What I would hope is that, you know, it's small enough that, certainly in terms of negotiating policy changes, that, you know, it's a party that works together behind the scenes to make sure that everyone's voice is heard within the party.
Okay. Now, you've only got a year, as such.
I have.
Not a lot of time if you get in.
No.
So, again, are you looking at this as a sort of just the bedding in process, or then looking for the 5-year term, presumably, to follow on, and making some sort of mark on Peel? But, of course, you've got the new boundaries and everything to come in as well.
Yes, I mean, there is a view of the strategic plan in September. So it would be nice to get Liv Van involved in that, because obviously that would be before any sort of term of office. I mean, a year is a bedding in period, but it's, for me, politics isn't about a 5-year stretch or a year stretch. It's for long-term decisions for the betterment of the island. It's irrelevant whether the politician's in place to see all of that through. That's not how decisions should be made.
And how do you rate the government that has been in power for 4 years? What would you say to what they've done and what they've been doing?
Talking to people around Peel, and I've knocked on a lot of doors, there's an unfortunate distrust of our current government, and I think that's the lack of transparency. So if there have been difficult decisions, and we all accept in the current economic climate that difficult decisions need to be made, but because there isn't an open and transparent sort of diffusion of information to the public, people are suspicious of for whose benefits some of those decisions are, and I would like to see more open and transparency, more openness, more transparency. You know, there's nothing to hide. Then, you know, show us. And I think it's the same with public consultations. If you're going to go out to a public consultation, we'll make the public very clear that it's happening. You know, if involve the public in our politics. We're a small island, and we have lots of excellent expertise and, you know, strong voices out there who would like to have an opinion. And we'll let them.